Lineage, you guys sound like a dog show. Find out on this next episode of Talk Gnosis, is lineage really important? Welcome, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Talk Gnosis for September 18th, 2013. I'm Bishop Kenneth Canterbury, and as always, I'm being joined by my lovely co-host, Bishop Lainey Peterson. Hello, Lainey.
Hello.
Make sure, all of our viewers, that you join us for discussions on our YouTube channel at YouTube Talk Gnosis and be able to participate. Tonight, we are being joined by the Metropolitan Catholic Host of the Oriental Apostolic Church of Damkar, His Beatitude, Val Matthews. Thank you, dear brother, for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to have been invited to join you.
We're really excited to have you.
Thank you very much, Lainey.
We've got a topic tonight that I think has probably come in almost any discussions of Gnostics, probably since I've been involved for nearly 30 years, and I'm sure it's crossed with you guys also, and that is lineage important? And is it important to modern Gnostics?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Lainey, your thoughts on that?
Well, it's something that has come up. I mean, I've been involved with modern Western esotericism now for going on around 20 years, and the issue of lineage comes up all the time. Were you initiated into an organization or in a tradition? If you have a church, who ordained you? And the question is, with lineage, is there a line, direct line of connection between you, an initiator, or an ordainer, going back to somebody who may have been an authority or a founder of an organization or a tradition? And I hear this a lot. You know, can an organization or a spiritual leader be legitimate if they do not or cannot trace a lineage going back to somebody of serious importance?
Now, Archbishop Matthews, let me ask you on this. And many times I think that people either associate lineage with apostolic succession, and in some cases that may be true, but in other cases may not be. What is kind of your feelings on the idea of lineage? How important is it? And do you even view it the same way as succession?
Now, I tend to view lineage exactly the same way as apostolic succession, in that, well, let's define lineage. I see lineage as a succession of initiates of a certain vehicle of spiritual technology, if you will. You know, a school, a tradition, a church, or an order.
Okay.
Now, these vehicles are generally seen as conduits of grace or divine power. Now, if we agree upon that definition, then as initiates, it would be important for us to be connected to these sources of divine energy and, well, recognized as such. For me, apostolic succession is, for me personally, one of the finest vehicles of spiritual technology in this age. So, seen as it is that apostolic succession bestows the transmission of the gifts from Jesus Christ to his original students, and then those are passed on through laying on of hands. Yeah, I tend to see lineage and apostolic succession as being identical, with apostolic succession being the most superior example of a lineage in this age.
Well, let me throw this out here, and let's see if we can get some discussion on this. You know, it's been kind of argued from others within various traditions. I mean, whether it is with the apostolic traditions or whether it's those who are from the esoteric schools, whether it's Martinism, Ela Cohen, any of the various schools and mysteries, is that one can be within the succession but be outside of the lineage. Meaning, for an example, I could go through my many pages of apostolic succession and see within the apostolic succession that I have shared lineages from several sources for the Église Gnostique. But there may be those within that tradition who says, because I am not working within the Église Gnostique, I'm not part of that lineage, therefore. Or we could even say the same is true for systems like Memphis Mizraim, where you have one particular group who says that this lineage comes directly from this grandmaster to this grandmaster. They received their lines of succession through there. You may have received a line of succession, but they're not recognizing it, or it may be considered valid, but it's not something that they agree with as part of regular. So I think that's sometimes where confusion can get mixed up with the idea of apostolic succession and lineage, is that especially when we're looking within a Gnostic frame of view, and most of us who have been in this long enough have exchanged initiations or apostolic successions, where all bases are covered. You've got all the successions of Peter, the successions of Mark, the successions of Thomas, of John, through various churches. But some would argue that you're not part of that. Lainey, real quick, your thoughts on what I just said?
Well, I'm a female bishop, so I'm kind of aware of at least some of this. That you can.
That's why I figured you'd be good for this.
And certainly, you can. You can, in some cases, you can remove yourself from the lineage. Perhaps it's one way of looking at it. Or the initiator or the person who is passing on that grace or divine technology may, because of an unwillingness to follow certain rules, might be laying their hands on somebody, but what's being transmitted is not perhaps considered to be in true relationship with the lineage. So that's how, of course, all these schismatic factions get going in many cases. Even today, and even among groups that have no issue with ordaining women or anybody else for that matter. But people will step away from an organization, but will use the technology that belonged to that organization. Now, the question is, how legitimate is that technology when it's separated from its original machine, so to speak?
Sure. Val, what's your thoughts on that? I mean, I'll give you my real brief, is that I'm a firm believer in transmitting a tradition in the same way that I receive that tradition. So whether it's Martinism, whether it's the church, my transmission of that tradition is going to remain the same. I'm not real comfortable with people who want to add elements and change that tradition if I'm passing on that tradition. If, for an example, I'm laying hands on Lainey and I'm consecrating her as a bishop within that tradition, it's within that tradition. Now, if I put my hands on her consecrator as something totally independent, I've got no problems with adding something different into that mix. But as far as your feelings on this, there would be those who would argue that it may be valid but irregular. But because it may be irregular, like in the example of Lainey, some people do not agree in making female priests or bishops. But yet we're passing on the succession and lineage, which we feel is a valid succession and lineage. Your thoughts?
Now, it tends to, my thoughts here are, in any system has its own standards. So one might consider that passing along that lineage as valid but irregular. That's one aspect of the Augustinian theory of apostolic succession. You can have total schismatics that pass on, that perform, sacraments that have efficacy. So it kind of depends on who you ask and where you are. What I would say is that generally, yeah, they will be valid but irregular.
Okay. Well, one of the questions that we had up here, and I would like again to kind of bounce this around. Is it lineage even necessary for valid religious or spiritual expression? I mean, there would be many who would argue within the Gnostic community, why is it even valid? In essence, aren't you guys doing what the Church of Peter does? Aren't you, in essence, doing what the traditional mainstream's religion are? Aren't you creating elitists? Aren't you kind of dangling keys in front of people and say, only when you come up through these ranks are we going to make you a bishop, and you are now going to be the authority of the church? Who am I to grant that authority? Because doesn't Gnosis come from within? Lainey?
Yeah, I think that I've heard this this joke in the esoteric community after initiations that somebody says eventually we're all going to get up to the top and realize that we've joined Amway, and I think that certainly there can be a real emphasis or an overemphasis on earning merit badges and bragging about degrees of separation between oneself and a famous person in the lineage. And I would say, however, that I think that it is absolutely valid and possible for somebody to receive a wild gnosis, so to speak, on their own, or by study or by practice. And I have no objection. I think that you can have a very legitimate spiritual or religious expression that doesn't involve a lineage. The only thing that I would say, the only thing that I would be asking about, and this would not even in a suspicious way, but I would just simply be asking, what kind of stability is there, and what kind of how do you then authenticate that person's position if they pop up out of nowhere with no history around them or people who have supervised them? But again, that's just one question, and I would also argue that having a valid lineage does not prevent a person from doing a whole lot of damage.
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, I think we've all seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Val, one of the things, that I kind of associate with both lineage and succession is kind of that esoteric principle of egregore. An egregore can be tied into things like the symbol, like in the case of the Knights Templar, the Knights Templar's cross. Within the Martinist tradition, the Martinist Pantacle. Those are all symbols that are physical representations of that egregore, but it also is tied into us by that chain of union. Those who have come before us, those in the present, and those who will come after us. We are part of this great chain and cycle that cannot be discounted. It's one of the arguments I've always used for apostolic succession and lineage is that, it may be true that one may have a vision from a secret chief or from the invisible college or from any countless names that we can say that has given one initiation, whether it be a vision of a Bogomil bishop or whether it is a vision of Christ himself on the road to Damascus.
Right, exactly.
Any of these things can give us the authority to go out and be an initiate. But there is also something, in my opinion, to be said of that brotherhood and that chain of union. Kind of your guys' thoughts on that, and starting off with you, Val.
Well, the brotherhood and the chain of union. If we are Christians and we have either had visions or we can show our roads of apostolic succession, are we behaving in a fashion that is consistent with the spiritual technology we're supposed to be practicing? If this is true, regardless of whether it came as a vision in our mom's basement while we were eating Cheetos, we're on the road to Damascus, we're in a drawing room having a seance, however it occurs.
Right.
It's valid.
Okay.
We can be connected to people who have had all of those experiences and do nothing with the spiritual technology we've been given.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes how we behave with the spiritual technology and tools that we've been given, that declares our validity. Not necessarily who laid their hands upon our heads.
I would have to agree. Lainey, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that there have been times when I've been in rites and ceremonies and services where we remember those who have gone before us. We remember, the community of saints, and it can be a really intense, very moving experience.
Absolutely.
And that we are all in this together. We were all in this together, and we will be all in this together. And that is a wonderful sense of being, and it's pretty extraordinary.
One other point, I think, before we get to some news and the end of the show is that, I think that sometimes that lineage can be used negatively. I think you've drawn up on this a little bit, Lainey. And that perhaps sometimes it is used for either just mediocre or even abusive leadership. Mm-hmm. I think we have all noticed that in various things. What can we kind of tell those of our viewers out there when someone's throwing around lineages and whether they feel this is an important aspect of them either becoming part of a tradition or taking on someone as their mentor or joining a church? What should they be looking for? Because again, we have all seen where this can kind of be used to justify either mediocrity or even kind of abuse. Lainey?
The 20th century mystic teacher, G.I. Gurdjieff, had one of his aphorisms at his institute was that if you have not a critical mind, your stay here will be useless. And I think that we always have to have a critical mind. Somebody claiming a lineage or even proving that lineage is no substitute for testing that person, verifying that person's leadership, and seeing the fruits of what they do. So we have to have a critical mind and don't just follow somebody because they claim a lineage.
I think that's excellent. Val, anything you have to add to that?
Basically the same as what Lainey said. By their fruit shall you know them.
Yeah,
I think that's some excellent points. Just in some quick news is that Talk Gnosis does now have a Facebook page. I want to thank Father Tony for getting that set up for us all, and that is at facebook.com/talkgnosis. You can also find us here on YouTube. Please make sure you join us next week where you get to learn a little bit more about your new co-host, myself and Bishop Peterson. I want to thank our guest, Archbishop Matthews, for joining us this week. Val, where can we find you on the internet?
I can be reached on Facebook at facebook.com/oriental.apostolic.church.damcar.
Okay.
I can also be reached at www.church-of-damcar.org.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure that we put those up in the links also. Again, I want to thank my host, Lainey, for another excellent episode. And again, thank our gracious producer, Father Tony, for sitting back there pushing all the buttons, making all this technology possible. Lainey, you want to carry us out?
Sure. First of all, we do earnestly solicit your feedback, your suggestions for show topics and guests. Please contact us. You can find us at GnosticNYC.com and the Talk Gnosis Facebook page. You can also leave comments on our YouTube channel, as well as send us an email at talkgnosis@GnosticNYC.com. This has been a production of Gnostic NYC. If you have enjoyed this show, we ask that you share it with your friends, click the like button, and subscribe to our channel. The opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the views of Gnostic NYC or any other organization. No animals, domestic or wild, were harmed during the production of this show. And for more Talk Gnosis, tune in every Wednesday for a new episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.